When looking for wide-angle prime lens for Sony, most of you are probably torn between getting a 24 1.4 G Master or a 20mm f1.8 G lens. And me personally, I have been a huge fan of Sony 24 G Master since the day one it was launched. But recently I actually started flirting a little bit more with a 20mm lens. I took it for a full wedding, I shot a bunch of samples, and I have a lot of thoughts to share with you, the pros and cons of getting one over another, and hopefully help with your decision. Let's do it! Hello everyone, my name is Magic. I'm a destination wedding photographer, Sony Europe ambassador, father of 4 children. Welcome to the YouTube channel, magical YouTube channel, where I talk about lenses, gear, wedding photography, and all that stuff. If you're into it, feel free to subscribe and follow my Instagram for more behind the scenes stuff and cool photos on my feed. So let's just jump into a quick introduction of 2 of the lenses that we're talking about today. So Sony 24mm was announced first and has this really beautiful compact design known from other GM lenses to follow. So we have a focusing ring, we have aperture ring that is declickable, we have manual focus to autofocus switch, and we have a custom button. It's a very lightweight lens, also very fast and accurate in terms of autofocus. We have 2 linear motors, so it's like the best of the best from Sony. It's been known for its sharpness and basically like people love this lens. And me personally, I do love this lens too. I've been using it for over 2 years. I shot a bunch of portraits with it, and most importantly, I took it for my dance floor stuff when I like to take photos from a wide angle lens, being inside the action and taking all these, action shots from people dancing and having fun. But as every G Master, it does come with a price. The price of this lens is $1,400, so it's not a cheap lens, but you're definitely getting best of the best in terms of performance with it. On the other side, we do have a 20mm f1.8 G lens, so it's not a G Master in terms of the naming or the label, but it does look exactly like its bigger brother. So it's basically a twin version of 24. It has the same build, the same compact, very light, well designed. We do have also focusing ring, aperture ring that can be declickable, MF to AF switch, a custom button, and also 2 linear motors, so the autofocus is as fast and accurate as a 24mm lens. It's just like tiny bit smaller than a 24, but it does have the same diameter of the filter up here. So we have 67mm of diameter. So it takes the same filter. So from up above, they look exactly the same. But then if you look from the side, 20 is just smaller and lighter. And this lens is also quite cheaper than the G Master because it costs $900, so $500 cheaper retail price than a 24 G Master. And comparing the performance of these 2 lenses, they both perform extremely well. Like everything about these lenses is top notch. The speed of AF system, thanks again to the linear motors, they both can achieve 30 frames per second with Sony A1, which not every lens can do. So that's definitely tells something about how fast the autofocus is. And both lenses are super sharp. I did shot a couple of, Lego test shots that I always do here in the studio, comparing the sharpness of 2 of them. And actually 20G looks a tiny bit sharper than my 24G Master. Of course, we're talking about a wider angle lens with f1.8 aperture. So we do have a bigger depth of field. So everything is going to be a bit sharper with this lens. But, comparing 1:1, 100% zoom in files with A7R3, it does look like this, at least this piece is a little bit sharper than mine. But actually, I think it's safe to assume that both of these lenses actually, in terms of performance, that they perform identical. They're both sharp, they're both accurate. There's not a significant difference between 2 of these showing that maybe this is a more expensive one, so it should be better one. No, they both are really good lenses in terms of performance. When a 20G was first announced, I actually did take it for some tests. You can see some sample photos that I shot, and I love when I I can use a wide angle like this, and I have a very nice scenario. Like I was shooting this party that has like beautiful crazy lights, and in a scenario like this everything will look amazing the wider you get. So with 20 millimeters it would look really good. Also during that test I found out that this lens performs really well in terms of also distortion. There is not much of a distortion per se. There is of course perspective distortion shooting that wide angle, but even keeping the subjects close to the edges of the frame will look good. So in my opinion, like looking at these two lenses, the difference between them comes down to actually 3 points. The first one is that 4 millimeter difference between the 24 and 820. Then we have the aperture difference between f1.4 and f1.8. And then third, we do have a size and weight difference. So it might sound obvious because like that's what you know from the specs. You look at these lenses and like, of course this one is 20, this one is 24. So Magic, what do you tell us? That the difference is 20 versus 24. How does that look in real life, or like in a scenario that I would typically shoot, so a wedding scenario? So that 4 millimeter difference and that aperture difference will definitely give you more background blur on a 24 millimeter lens. So 24 at 1.4 will give you twice as shallow depth of field as you would get with 20 shooting 1.8. Meaning if I was shooting my Lego subjects, like shooting quite close to them, my depth of field was around 1 centimeter using 24G master lens, and from the same distance 20G lens would give me 2 centimeters of depth of field. So that's a difference. You can definitely see that bokeh balls are bigger when using 24G master lens. So like everything is a little bit blurrier. But then having a wider lens like 20 millimeters G, you can always crop to get the same angle, the same frame. So on the other hand, if you don't care about background blur and having more blurry image, or you know, more magical look, let's say, you can easily go for 20 and then have both 20 and 24 if you just crop a tiny bit. So that's sort of advantage of a wider lens, that you can always crop it to be tighter. So in this point, I'd say it does comes down to how much of a background blur do you want. I know talking about this is still theory. So let's talk about real experience shooting a wedding with this lens. So last week I took a 20 millimeter lens instead of 24 for a full wedding. So I knew that whenever I will need that wide angle lens, I'll just take 20. And my thoughts are that in a specific scenario that I like shooting with wide angle lens, which is a dance floor stuff, 20G is actually better than 24. Being inside the action, shooting people really close, having that little bit wider angle when you just can't take step back to have wider field, it's precious. And in this scenario, I'm usually shooting higher f values, so there is not much of an advantage of having 1.4 lens instead of 1.8. So dance floor stuff, I'd say 20 millimeters is the winner. But then during a portrait or trying to do anything else with a 20 millimeters, it's going to be a little bit harder. So for example, in this photo, when I was trying to capture the emotions of the couple listening to the speeches, I was trying to get both of them in the frame, trying to use that wide angle view, like it was too much. It was too wide. So trying to take photos like this, like everything that is farther in the background gets even farther away than when you look with your own eyes or when you shoot with a standard focal length like 35. So it is really difficult to find a good shot with such a wide angle. Like all the walls will just fall a little bit due to the perspective distortion. And I do feel that for portraits, 24 millimeters is already a challenging lens. You can actually find my video about the differences between shooting different prime lenses for portraits. It's linked here. So all these portraits that you see right now, still taken with 24 millimeters, I'd say are hard to photograph. By the way, if you like the colors in these pictures, I used my Magic Cadabra presets. The link is in the description. But then I do think that shooting, portraits is very personal. Some people like shooting portraits close to the couple. Some people maybe shooting from a farther direction. So I reached out to my friend, one of my favorite photographers from UK, Andy Gaines, who I knew that he used to love a 20 millimeters lens back in the Nikon days. So I asked him to provide some of the photos so I can show you examples how you can actually use a 20 millimeter lens to your advantage in portraits. So these portraits are epic. He shot them with 20, so he used that wide angle lens. You can see that couple is small, he's very far away from the couple, so he's shooting a completely different style from what I'm shooting, but then 20 millimeters works perfectly for a scenario like this. Personally, I'm quite torn right now myself, as I do love my 24 GM lens and I'm gonna still keep it to use for my portraits, for my wide angle portraits and for the way I shoot, but then I would really love to get a 20 millimeters just for my dance floor stuff. So I will need to make a decision here because I don't think I need to keep both of them. And I do hope that this video gave you some light on the differences between these two lenses, and depending on how you shoot and what do you like, do you prefer more background blur or do you prefer that epic wide angle view in your images? It's very personal, and both of these lenses are exceptional in terms of performance, and that 20G is actually a great deal because it's way cheaper than a 24 and it probably will give you 80% of stuff that 24 would give you. But then I know that some people are in love with that part that 20G won't give you and you can only achieve with like a larger aperture lens like 24 1.4. Let me know in the comments what do you think about these lenses and which one do you think is for you. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you in the next one.